3.3, subtracting integers. So let's go ahead and review additive inverse. The additive inverse is the same number with the opposite sign. So let's look at an additive inverse. We could do 10 and negative 10. Think of another one. Negative 22 and 22. Okay. Subtracting integers. So when we subtract integers, we add the opposite. Okay. So to subtract an integer, add its additive inverse. Remember, add the opposite. Okay. So P minus Q. So this subtraction becomes a positive, and then you move kind of like the negative into here. So you're adding the opposite. So this becomes subtraction, so you change it to adding, and then this becomes a negative. Okay, so let's look at the numbers. So if I have 4 minus 9, it's the same thing as 4 plus a negative 9. Subtraction is just like adding a negative. Okay, so here's a negative 5. So let's look at on the number line. So if I'm at 4, okay, and I subtract 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm at negative 5, okay? So when I'm adding or subtracting 9, I'm adding a negative, like the negative 9, and subtracting 9 is the same thing, okay? So if I'm subtracting a negative, I'm going to change it to adding, and the opposite of negative 10 is a positive. So really, this problem is just 7 plus 10, which is 17. So if I am at 7, which is right here, and it says I have to subtract a negative, but subtracting a negative, it's basically saying that I'm doing the opposite of a negative, which is actually adding 10. So then I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So then it is 17. Let's use some counter chips, okay? So if I have 6 minus 7, it could also be written as, so I'm going to add the opposite, 6 plus, okay? So I add, and then the opposite of 7 is negative 7. Or you can think of it as moving that this is a negative 7, right? And then you put a plus. However you want to think about it, okay? So let's look at the chips. So I have 6 positive, and I have 7 negatives, okay? So I need to cancel out some chips. So I'm going to cancel this one and this one. These two. And then I have 3 over here. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm left with this 1, red, and red is negative. So I'm going to say that it is negative 1. If you look here, are there more positives or are there more negatives? There's more negatives, so your answer is going to be negative. And just like we did before, you subtract the 2 in your head when the signs are different. This is the positive and negative. So signs are different, subtract. So 7 minus 6 is 1. There's more negatives, so your answer is negative. Okay, so here's some practice problems for you. I want you to go ahead and try these on your own for a minute. So go ahead and pause the video, and I'll get back to you in just a sec. Okay, so you should have added the opposite. So this subtraction becomes plus, the negative 2 becomes plus 2. Okay, so 1 plus a positive 2 is just 3. Okay, give yourself a smiley face if you got it. If not, go ahead and change your work. If I have negative 10, right, this subtraction becomes a positive, and the 7 becomes a positive. So now I'm looking at it, and I have a negative here and a positive here. So that means that the signs are different, so we're going to subtract in our head. Okay, so 10 minus 7 is 3. But are there more negatives or positives? There's more negatives, so it's -3. We could also do a number line if I'm at -10, right? And I'm adding 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So this is gonna be -3. I didn't get all the way to 0 yet, okay? If m equals -15 and n equals 8, what is m minus n? So I'm gonna just go ahead and I'm gonna put a box. This is the m, right? And we're gonna do minus, this is gonna be n, okay? Now I'm just gonna plug in. So m is -15 and n is 8. So really my problem that I have is -15 minus, you could say a +8 if you wanted to do that, okay? So let's change the sign. So I'm going to add the opposite. So 15 plus, and then the opposite of +8 is -8. So now it's pretty easy. My signs are the same. I have two negatives. So I'm going to add them together. So 15 plus 8 is 23. But I keep the sign because I'm adding. So if you would think about it, you're at -15. I'm adding more negatives. So it's going to end up at -23. Okay, so you just keep the negative. The temperature on the moon will vary from -173 degrees to 127 degrees. And we need to find the difference. So I'm going to start with 127 degrees. And I have to figure out the difference. So I'm going to subtract the -173. Okay, so I need to add the opposite. So my subtraction becomes a positive, and this negative becomes a positive. And my numbers will stay the same, so 173 and 127. So really, I'm just adding 127 and 173. So I'm going to go ahead and do this over here. So you get 10, 10, and 300. So the difference in temperature is 300 degrees Celsius. And so I would go ahead and say the difference between the temperatures is 300 degrees Celsius. Okay, and that's my answer. And that's it. Just overall, what you need to do when you're subtracting, you can change it to add the opposite. Okay, so basically, it makes it a whole lot easier to solve the problem if you make it into an addition problem. All right, that's it. Thank you.